Well, good afternoon. Welcome to the Dr. Contrast Live. Hopefully it's going to be a good session here today. Kind of switching gears. Last go around, last Wednesday, we did a little bit of slot car livery work, which is very well received, and had some great input on that one. But at the same time, I think as I go from week to week, I just kind of rotate some of the subject matter out, make sure we cover a lot of ground. And I thought hopefully this day and this one today will be a very interesting setup for us because it's a live project, still ongoing, and it's taking place up in the northeastern part of the state. And it's really an interesting set of circumstances because there's so many elements involved in it. And this is what I received some time ago on the site plan of the actual piece itself in the northwest area. This is a very strong, bold corridor coming out of the northeast side of the state of Ohio, and then the primary entryway right in here. This is where we enter the site itself. A lot of commercial area here, for example, a lot of residential housing and the like around the entire complex, some ponding, and a bike path, and a little stream that goes through the entire process here, the entire site, and into a town center gathering area, for example, right in this area here, kind of a nice little spot. Then some senior citizen complex in through here, and then some apartment complexes up on the far west side, apartment east side of the process. So going to the west and the east, a very large piece of property, but had a lot of moving parts to it, a lot of components. So we were tasked with the fact of going through all the divisions, for example, mixed use, residential, some of the gateway situations, some of the signage, wayfinding material, residential architecture, a lot of neat stuff going on here. So let me walk you through this. This is the site plan itself. This is where it all started. And this is phase one, the overall site plan, very massive again. Oh, by the way, before I begin, along this main corridor as well, there's a lot of businesses along the area that are really upset with a lot of the confusion or the congestion. So we did a whole series of concept sketches along here for maybe some buffering and so forth, and then some tree escape and some maybe resting areas, for example, for the game to utilize along that main drag. And then some of the facilities back into here, we did both sides of the road. So pretty extensive program, interesting things here. So let me walk down the line here with this whole process. Site plan to begin with, and the first set of concept sketches was just maybe a little what might look like, for example, when you come into the retail space, the entryway, a little bit of signage about where you are, some architectural around it, and then maybe a little building complex down the line here as part of the whole retail setup, phase one. I started out with a whole series of real loose pencil sketches to get some theme work down and get a basic concept or personality of what the site might look like. They wanted a lot of Rockwellian look, an old town village piece of architecture. So we started there with this series of pencil sketches, and not a lot of time spent just putting themes together. And I think that's the thing that's unique about landscape architecture from my point of view. Whenever I work with a project like this, no matter the scope or the scale, there's a lot of divisional pieces into it, a lot of pieces to pay attention to. But no matter what the content is, I always like to start with just a series of, all right, what ifs? Here's a category, for example, maybe it's an entryway piece. Here's a series of sketches that might be applicable for that entryway. And then the residential, same thing, architecture, same thing, and so on. So that we're breaking it down into pieces and parts that the client can kind of review and say, this is good, this is not, try this, try that. Very flexible in use of operations to make sure that the sketches convey the idea, but at the same time give the viewer and the client base enough conversation to discuss whether it's yay or nay, good, bad, or indifferently. So we'll walk you through here some of the early phase sketches of just basic sketches. As we go through this development, you'll see more finished work and conceptual stuff as we go down the line. So there's phase one. There's another view in that same retail space area, for example, expanding upon it from another view. This is looking at it from the west to the east. A little elevation study here coming in off the main drag, some signage around it, and again, a main street coming through here with some parking area here, signage along the way, some boulevarding, trees. Then the retail shop areas, for example, with a lot of awning canopies, again, old town Rockwell look, Rockwellian look that they wanted to achieve, with a bit of a contemporary spice to it. For example, this dome little restaurant area and some shed roofing and the like. Just a variety of architectural styles for them to look at and evaluate. So that was a second study of this little retail space area. And as we go down the line here, a lot of that site plan had some residential areas in it. And what they wanted to do in the residential area, along the bike path around the entire perimeter of the shape or the actual site plan, was introduce a little stream of some sort. And maybe it's interrupted every now and then. It starts and stops and so forth, and it goes through the entire site. But they wanted a series of walking bridges where, for example, along the bike path, they could walk across the little crossing bridge into a resting area, some signage, maybe some benches and the like, and then pick up a walking path on the other side of that stream. So it was a two-sided sidewalk situation, one on the right and one on the other side of each side of the stream, that they could use some of these bridges. So a lot of time spent. In fact, in the meeting, it was interesting. They wanted to see a lot more development in terms of what little bridges could be done from a very simple perspective. For example, treated wood platforms with perhaps, in this case, you can do the signage up on top of stamped metal, and then the powder-coated black metal railings or body-colored railings to kind of move across the pond itself to create the bridge. So that was one start. This was started with a series of sketches on just those little walking bridges for the site to be looked at and to be evaluated. So we'll come back to this in a few moments a bit, but a lot of area here really kind of very sensitive in terms of where the stream would start and stop, where they wanted to put resting areas like benches and the crossover areas. So paid a lot of attention to some of the conversation in the meetings about what had to take place, where they wanted them, what the character was, and we're going to implement that as we go through it. So the next step here, this gets into along the main drag. We had two areas here that in this sketch that are interesting. An entryway clock tower coming in into the residential area here, pardon me, the business strip. This is a little bit of a variation of the theme from the one we just looked at. This is still a commercial area, but again, notice a little bit of boulevard here, and then again, an entryway, signage, etc., and a clock tower. It's going to be lighting elements coming into the actual space itself. And behind that, if you went north into this crossover right here route, there was a big green space area that they wanted to have the same kind of identity for some of the towers and some of the signage pieces that were placed in the operation. So again, just a small little detail of what that retail space would look like. And of course, it'd be both sides of the road and something behind here. I don't know how far they want to take that yet, but by the way, this is under construction now. There's a lot of pieces being moved into place, and we're still active in this area. So a lot of fun to deal with, but again, just a lot of variety in the concept work. Hey, Chip 7, how you doing, Chief? Good to have you on board, man. Long time no speak. How are you? Great to have you on board, Chip. This is a pretty recent project of some landscape architecture. I'm just going through a series of thumbnail sketches now on the overall site plan. And if you miss a little bit, maybe you go back and look at it a little bit later and take a peek at it. A pretty massive approach. It's still been a while indeed. Yeah, it has, but I hope you're doing well. And just a bit of a retrospect, this is a very active program indeed. We're still working on some things. Yeah, I can imagine. I keep meetings. Yeah, well, at least you're busy working, and that's a key thing, Chip. That's good to know, man. So if you can stay with me for a bit here, we'll walk you through some of these sketches. And I don't know if you noticed, seen it or not, but last Wednesday, put on a little stream program. We're doing a series of slot car systems for a group in Atlanta and doing some advanced vehicle Formula One stuff for slot cars. Really neat stuff. So you get a chance to look at that from last week. Chip, take a peek at it. We finally got the engineering down. We've got the 3D printed body on it and the whole thing, and then some livery studies for the actual form itself. A very advanced Formula One piece. It's not like typical Formula One today. You'll see a very different thing. Yeah, you got to check it out. It's pretty cool. I think. And if you look at it, Chip, give me drop me a note and some insight of how you feel about it, and because we're going to a whole family of forms of Formula One team, and it's going to be for it's called EXP Experimenta, so it's going to be neat stuff. So anyway, back to this piece. It stated earlier on the stream, a lot of moving parts, and the retail space was interesting. The conversation with the meetings, what they had with the funding group and the actual township where this is located, they want a lot of activity, a lot of seated areas, a lot of resting areas, a lot of really grand entryway pieces, and some gateway stuff to kind of give it a real presence. So you'll see a lot of variations as we go through this portfolio as we go along the line here. So again, at second pass rather, a little retail space area up there. again, back to this bridging system, a lot of conversation about this stuff with the residential pieces behind the property itself, and the stream going through it, and then the walking bridge, little signage with lighting on it, and maybe some benches added later on, you'll see, and then right down the line here, just to get some feel for those who want to use a bike path or a walking path through the entire site. So that was, again, another variation on theme for bridges. So I think, again, there's another variation, for example, same set of circumstances. This is a retail area off in the distance, and here's the the residential area coming down off the backyard, and a little walking bridge. Again, a little lighted sign, a lot of foliage, a lot of green space around it, and every so often you'd see a series of these bridges. You could walk over and go from one side of the stream to the other. And then into another next set of circumstances, once we got past some of those areas, a lot of interest in getting to what's called a landmark or a real benchmark piece as a gateway. And that gateway, they wanted to include a clock tower. So it seems to me every community I work with in terms of landscape architecture or architecture in general, everybody loves to have a clock tower. And that's a tough one because, boy, there's so many variations on theme. You go Old English, you go old school, new school, contemporary, all metal, all wood, and stones material. So when I start a concept like this, what I've done, and as I said earlier on, I've really kind of scattered on a lot of different areas, for example, into metal roofing, the hat section roof, maybe some fiber board application, actual clock, and metal structure back to stone. So it's a combination of traditional pieces and contemporary pieces. And we go from there. Clock tower makes a great way. Yeah, it really does. It's certainly not companionship. It's a great feature to have, but the variation in theme, you've got to be very careful because some communities are very traditional, some very advanced, some very in between the roads, and you don't know where to take it. So from my point of view, from the design perspective, I don't fall in love with, oh yeah, they want this. I want to make sure that they see a lot of span in terms of what they could do with this thing, and I begin to let them to pick and choose. And these sketches were, this is just a series, maybe 1 or 2 plates of just a lot of sketches. I mean, 10, 15 pages worth of just clock tower stuff in the meeting. And we put it on the table and we talk about it. So this is phase 1 for clock tower studies. Some contemporary, some very nautical in some sense, and some very traditional, like this guy here. Little cupola up on top, hat section up again, stone below, and a real flared base on it to give it some kind of a setting. And some landscaping around it. So that was phase 1. There's another little place. This is more of a gateway setting where I thought this is where it really got some direction here. I really loved that whole idea of having almost like a truss system as a build system with a little overhead bridge, entryway, entry, egress, and the roadway, and a compatible signage with maybe the tower signage on each side. There's another variation on that same. This would actually replace that. The actual span itself, the crossover bridge would still be there, but another variation on putting a tower in its place. Again, just a lot of fun to work with. And I think the thing I've always been intrigued with in the landscape architecture, and pardon me for being redundant, but I've always felt this way about architecture, especially landscape. There are so many neat things being done out there from a materials perspective, both softscape and hardscape materials. It's just really inciting and very exciting to move into these things and begin to treat them with design themes because there's so much flexibility, lighting, materials, stone, hardscape, soundscape, it's just infinite. So it's on one hand, you get a lot of input from the community, which is very restrictive, but on the other hand, you hear them speak, and also they want to move things out a little bit to be distinct. So that gives you a lot of latitude to work with, which I think is really exciting. And you'll see some of the stuff as we go through this portfolio here in the next few minutes or so. But again, another gateway piece, clock tower plus entryway bridge. And we go across here, the next sketch here, just going to go down the line. Back to some little bridge studies. Again, very simple railing, just powder-coated materials and metals and so forth, and some very, almost like what I would call boilerplate powder-coated metal with their logo on it, and just variations on theme going across those green space bridge studies. So what do you think, Chip, so far? Making sense, Chief? I hope you're following along all right. It's really good to have you on board. Man, long time no speak, and And really pleased you're doing well, Chip. That's great. So again, variations on theme, as we said earlier. I mean, I've just really made it a habit of going in there, and I just scattergun like mad and put a lot of material out there for these people to evaluate, and then hope we get some feedback on that. Then we kind of narrow it down into a final presentation piece or manufacturing piece, engineering. And as I said also, this is also a very active program. So I can't say an awful lot about it, but I can give you this insight. This is sketches done more recently to kind of go into, it's almost like a phase 3 process into this whole thing. So the next one here, bridge studies. Back to that gateway piece again, a little bit of an overhead perspective, the primary entryway into like a double boulevard, and then the bridge system over the top, and the double signage and the clock tower in the center here. Kind of cool, little detail of what this little detail would be in this portion here on the actual side, right and left of the actual bridge structure, the truss going over the top of the entryway piece. A lot of landscaping underneath it. And again, when you come back in through here, in time to come, it'd be nice to add a boulevard down here where you've got an actual treescape to kind of separate those lanes a little bit. So again, back to that was a clock tower, and actually I'd call that more like a gateway piece. It kind of could bring into the site. So and then next sketch here, some resident. This is kind of a nice little variation in theme where you actually take a moment, as stated in the very beginning of the presentation here today. Around the entire site, there's a walking path, and there's a lot of buffering going on in terms of housing, different aspects like the green space gathering place, the senior citizen section, high-rise apartment studies, and residential. So, but they want a lot of buffering. So we looked at some things, how to utilize maybe fencing and some contoured landscaping, and then adding some foliage and trees, and changing the variation, for example, of that fencing around the actual site itself. And just variations on theme, how to start the fence, interrupt it, and then with maybe some foliage, kind of break it up so it's not such a big, long gateway piece in terms of prison-like fencing piece. So a variation on theme, there, a little elevation, a little perspective, and again, another perspective again. But the key thing they wanted to do, which I think was really commendable on their behalf, was to take that whole area and begin to landscape it so it's got much more contour instead of just being a flat piece of property. And the kind of fencing they want to work with to close that off was a very good positive aspect from my point of view here. So next sketch, we're over here. Now, once we got past this, now we started doing some things that I thought were interesting. More definition and some clock tower work. This gets into a little bit of multimedia work here. Does the epic car come to the fence? You know what? Yeah, it does, but we've done a hotter one. We'll show you a bit later. It's much more of a, almost like a one-off Bugatti, so kind of cool. So, yeah, they do. That's a great line. The epic car comes to that fence. Yes, it does. That'd be an extra cost when it comes to my way, so we're good. So once you go through all series of little thumbnail sketches and ballpoint pen or pencil, then you come back in. And now these sketches now, that are switching gears a little bit, these sketches are now coming back from them, them being the staff, the builders, the manufacturers, the architecture we're working with, to kind of give us some feedback on what those towers might look like. So very typical thatched roof on this thing. Clock location, some enclave signage in the actual piece itself, and then some sheet metal support brackets, and then back to traditional stone moorings and mountings on this thing. And again, basic theme here, and then a little variation on that theme. Instead of being so choked off here, maybe this has a little bit of a return on it to kind of lighten it up a bit. And then that enclave sign could go back in through here, or else hang in the center with a lantern of some sort. So this is the beginning of variations and themes here. Another variation of the same thing. This goes back to the initial entryway piece. This would be at the gateway, an entry coming into the actual piece itself. Had a friend who sold a sports tower. And Z3 included. Yeah, that's pretty neat. That is pretty cool. Excellent. Yeah, the Z3 is a neat machine. So variation 2, same entryway piece again, the truss system over the gateway, clock tower, and another variation on the theme, maybe putting a little bit of like a sculpted piece of metal to indicate enclave, and again, that truss system coming off of it. The very typical, very approach, this could be hat sectioned or actual thatch itself coming out, or shingled upper on the piece, and again, back to a very traditional stone base. And I think the thing that we want to get across here in these sketches is how, again, you come back to the very traditional pieces with combinations of some futuristic things and some very advanced technology pieces to kind of blend it all together so it doesn't become a static old format. And I don't mean to be critical at all, but an older format that it's just static and that doesn't really fit the need of the community. So here we are, that's another variation on theme there. Now this is fun. Now we switch gears from the actual gateway piece. Once you get in the enclave, signage areas directed to certain areas, for example, residential, mixed use, etc. These are little signage pieces, everything from lighting and stone, again, sheet metal, some stonework, printed etched piece of metal, for example, for the actual piece itself. Then an etched glass to be illuminated at night, and an etched glass here with the actual logo piece stained into the glass or into it, for example. Again, variations on theme, on just wayfinding materials, how to get from outlet B to C to D and so forth, different sections within the site. So there's another one, a little sketch here, it's going to go down the line. Now we switch gears. I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the presentation, it had a strip where some senior citizen housing was, but behind that, they had enough space for a green space area. So they wanted to take a look at a shelter of some sort within that green space that might look like. And again, if you go south of that, this is where down below, this is where the green space would be. And south of that is a residential elderly, senior citizen housing. So there's a gathering place here, just some little tree-lined areas here, and I got some walkways into it. And this would be the location of that actual shelter itself, and a little perspective study coming into it. There's a lot of hardscape material to kind of present it for the actual viewers or residents of the area. A little plan view study of the enclave itself, then the actual building concept. So this is like a first phase of what a structure might look like for this gathering space. And another little concept here, same area in the green space. This time the building is located in the actual center. Then there's an actual entry egress into it, and again underneath it's all open, and a little bit of banner work here to kind of move into it. That could be happening around here, these little areas here. They'll show you where those flag systems are and where those posts are. Nice picture. Yeah, that's a barbecue. Yeah, that'd be cool, wouldn't it? So again, notice again, the issue comes up, we need a structure for the green space, a gathering place. Well, when I hear that, the first thing I go is, I don't go into a lot of avant-garde different approaches to maybe just a small little bungalow or a shed or a posted, almost like a barn pole piece. They were definitely adamant about having a character or personality in these buildings. So you'll see a lot of different variations on theme that I go through, and I think they were well received. I don't know which direction they're going to take it. This is one piece that's still under construction, under conversation. But again, variation to me is everything. I give these people, I mean, they had enough honor and respect to come to me in terms of putting together a process. I'm sorry for bothering you. I wanted to challenge yours to get rid of that thing. Jeez. Sorry about that, Chip. I don't know how to get rid of that thing, so we'll just let it fly here. So again, the idea behind it all is to give them variations on theme and let them decide on which way they want to go with this. And again, material choices, character, scale, all those things become. Yeah, it happens. It's absolutely nuts, isn't it? I mean, good grief. There's nothing better to do. I don't need all that stuff. Price is lower than any other competitor. Yeah, sure it is. Not interested. So thanks, Chip, for hanging in there. Again, variation. Here's a little elevation study, another variation looking at that same green space. Two elevations, a little more elaborate now, still open space. Notice again, very much almost Williamsburg-like, almost East Coast, New English kind of look. Columns, stone wall, entry, egress, and again, two variations on theme. Maybe it's all gabled, then it has a little bit of a cupola piece on top of it, and a different variation up on top as well. A lot of fun to work with, and again, I say it so often, landscape architecture to me is a really great discipline, because again, the flexibility is endless. And when you start to move into it, you'll learn some things from it, and believe me, those of you who follow me enough on the channel here, I take this very seriously. Things I've learned here, I bring into product architecture, transportation design, and everything else we do, whether it's Star Citizen stuff, it all applies. So I think it's much more lucid. It's best to be lucid and beyond, not so guarded, but just open things up and take chances, and you bring it all back into the discipline of your choice. So there we are, variations of theme. Another set of circumstances, again, with this gathering place. Still New England in style, a very East Coast look. Again, stone, shingle, cupolas, different variation on theme here, and then again a little stone wall, and so just giving it some character. Enough area here, again, kind of a presence about it, and a really interesting take on the overall look of this lodging place or this gathering place in the green space for all the community to come together, barbecues and all that stuff. Like you said, that'd be kind of neat barbecue. Every year, got it. Another variation on theme here, looking at, again, a different promenade, a little tower study here, different look, same overall look as far as, again, a different signage area coming into it where this would be falling in place here. And again, stone, traditional stone, shingle upper, and another cupola design up on top. Different variations again. A little pencil study or pen study with a lot of banner work around it. This is kind of an interesting thing. They like the idea of having this surrounded with banners. They could change those banners depending on the time of the year, spring, summer, Halloween, Christmas, etc. All the vacation, 4th of July, kind of a neat stuff here. Very classic conservative theme with bricks, stones, and shingle. What do you think? You like that look, Chip, or is it just kind of too static? I think looking at it from their point of view, they liked it because it was much more, it was a little enriching for them, being a different departure as opposed to just being a shed. So what do you think, Chip? You buying that? Very classic conservative theme? Yeah, it's cool. They loved, I mean, they had a hard time going with what kind of format to look at, but they love the idea of the material side, and some of the variations on theme would yet to be decided yet. So again, another variation on theme here. Let's get this guy, this next one over here. And there's another one here, a little bit more dramatic now, 4-corner special. Coming into this guy, a little bit of a different perspective. But again, cupola is different, little riser up on top. This could be a clock tower as well as maybe a piece of signage. Again, a different, very little wider beams and so forth. They're gutsy on the actual piece itself. I'm fine with you that it's something more avant-garde as long as it's consistent. Yeah, I think you're right. I'm in the same camp, but yeah, avant-garde is fine, but I wouldn't want to do anything like scary with a lot of glasses and a lot of different blown materials or raw materials that just don't seem to apply. And above all else, they're not weatherproof. They're really tough to work with. This is a conditional piece here. And again, some of the hardscape work coming into it, some of the tiling work and so forth. Just give it more of a presence so it doesn't look like just a shed out there in the middle of a grass field. So again, a lot of variations in theme, different looks. Still working on this gathering place. Now we're back to the entryway piece. This is another entryway coming in off of one of the main drags. It's a bit of an overview of, again, clock tower in position, a little bit of a landscape boulevard entry, and an entry in and entry out egress over the top of that stream that comes through it and so forth. This is at the northwest corner, I think, coming into the site. Again, another variation on the bridge. Really neat stuff. Again, notice signage done, lighting over the night, over the top of the actual cornice itself, and then the sculpted walls, and a lot of hardscape material around that gives them real definition. I do like the old stone bricks, and I do too. I think you can't beat it. There's a lot of mixture in it. Mixture meaning a lot of ways the variation to vary the theme, but at the same time they look solid and they look permanent and look timeless. I think that's an important criterion when you look at something like this. Again, bridge study, another entryway piece, other than the actual one that has the actual crown over the top of that truss going through it. The one with the truss is a primary entryway. That's the gateway. This one is a secondary bridge system at the northwest corner of the actual site itself. Then we move on. There's another. Now we're back to this. This is fun. Now we're back to that same concept of this little walkway bridges over the top of that stream. The stream is located here. And then actually the residential pieces would be up on the hillside up through here, and again behind us here. They wanted to add like a seating space, so a little bridge, very simple little pylons with lighting on top of it, perhaps some powder coated fencing, and a solid piece of metal or something, or wood or a fibre board with some graphics on it. And then again, a lot of hardscape around the actual bench where they can walk across the bridge, take a break, and then walk on through and continue the journey. So back to some bridge studies. Again, this goes back again to that one piece we looked at a few moments ago, that small little bridge study here for the Enclave, that secondary piece. Another variation of theme coming in over the top of that stream. A lot of stone, a lot of little fencing over the top of that. Just give it a little more personality to it, give some character. So again, a lot of variations on theme, elevation study of what that might look like from another point of view. There's a little bit of a different signage piece up on top here. This is more circular, this is more elliptical, and again with some lighting on the end, much more post-like. So again, I think you notice as I go through these sketches, I really do spend a lot of time working on variations on theme. It's not just one look and then overlay it, change a little bit of this. I mean, I go through a lot of explosive materials in terms of changing the view, changing the materials, changing the character, changing the shapes. Again, the reason that's done is not to show individuals at the other end, for example, the client, that, gee, look what we can do. They've asked us to put together a program that's a departure. And the only way you get there is to really kind of take your time, start with a point A, and B to C and D. Give them variations on theme. I'm not one, for example, as you well know, Chip, I sit down and do a sketch and then put a piece of tracing paper on it, just with some very final little overlays. I think that's, in some respects, it's okay once you have a final design down. But in the beginning of putting a concept together, I think that's cheating in a sense, because you're trying to lock what you're sending yourself messages, you want to lock yourself in. This is it. I can't buy that as an approach until we get to the final stage of, yeah, this is really terrific. Now let's refine this. That's a refinement process to me. But this is conceptual, so it's a much more open-ended set of circumstances to work with. Bridge themes again. Now, Rebecca, here's that little advanced little Lamborghini. This comes along with the signage here, Chip. They mentioned, it's kind of fun in the conversation about maybe 2 or 3 months ago. They mentioned the fact that they often would like to put car shows on. I said, oh, really? You like to put car shows on? So do I. That'd be kind of fun. So we took that green space and just a section of it, and began to convert that into putting some vehicles around the perimeter and what it might look like. For example, auto fair, for example, 2020, 2023, et cetera. And then coming back in and putting a little bit of the machines lined up around the space itself, and then a gathering space on the inside with an auto review, et cetera, and then some little platform pieces, maybe for entertainment or presentation pieces and the like. So that was part of the process too. I was really surprised to find that they would be more than willing to look at something like that, using that green space as an actual vehicle or showcase for automobile shows, presentations, orchestrations, and the things. That'd be kind of neat. So that was another look at that. Now back to some of that bridging work. This has been a real sense of, that walkway thing was a real sense of, they really want to spend a lot of time with what that might look like. Again, little theme on the actual stream going through it, the crossing bridge, and then again, hardscape, bench, what it might look like. Plan view, and again, perspective, what you come across here. And again, what's missing here are the pylons. I don't want to put those in place to kind of destroy or overshadow the look of the hardscape once you cross the bridge to get there to sit down and take a rest. So again, a lot of time spent on little fine details like that that make a big difference in the overall site. And I think the number one theme that we want to establish them was a real departure for the Enclave. It's different than the actual complex of living systems, retail, and all the pieces coming together. It had a much stronger mix to it. So again, back to that. Now we're into another area here, kind of wrapping things up and coming down the line here. This is a concept study for the gathering place on the plaza, another retail area, another major entryways over here. You come into the space, come in through this boulevard area into the retail area. But also they wanted some gathering place around it, so we put together this very transparent overview or umbrella over the top of it. Devil's in the details, yes it is. And you keep it suppressed, you're in good shape, right, Chip? So again, they wanted something a little bit different other than just having a run through and stop the park and so forth. The parking was all behind the buildings, et cetera. In this case, they wanted a gathering place that had some softscape and hardscape materials to it, where they could sit down under a shade or maybe stop and communicate with one another and just have a meeting or whatever, and just relax a little bit. And also those little places here would have little enclave areas would actually have benches or areas too, where they could actually sit down and just take a look at and spend some time just taking a break. The retail. This is where if we look at this little section here, this is where the senior citizen complex would be. The main drag is down here down here to the south area, and then to the north, up in this area here is where that green space would be, that gathering place would be. So this is just south of that. Again, they wanted some, again, a little gathering place for the seniors and so forth. Parking areas here, a little boulevard area, and some walking paths around it. And again, a real nice gathering place here with again, places to meet and sit down and relax. A little gazebo area, for example, develop a pond and a walking path to get to it. A lot of neat little features in that space. So this is the beginning of the architectural sketch concept and the overalls of what that little detail would look like. And and it was actually, there was one strip here and one on the other side here, behind that, and then another one behind that as well. So there's actually 4 banks of those processes here, or the housing system that the seniors would occupy. So there you go there. I'll get that line up. Now, last but not least, in the actual retail space itself, they want to go through an area where they had like a theater of some sort. Along with that, this is the actual retail space. And that piece back here, we showed you a couple of sketches back. Let me kind of go back here for more. Now, this one. But this one here this sketch showing this little promenade area, this gathering plaza, would be in this case, right off of here, off this benching area. You go south of that retail space, and that's where that gathering place would be located. So, but they wanted a theater, again, entry egress into it, elevation study. They wanted a very circa 1950s and 60s or 40s looking quality theater. So I noticed the big chevrons and the actual cantilevered pieces off the top of the actual building itself. This is all theater, then you're making a retail space here. So that was one concept of it. And then looking at the last but not least, another little view of this thing, coming back in, another variation on the theme, for example, the cinema at the other end of this strip, and again, reversing the actual shopping areas going off of that. And again, a little elevation study of what that might look like here. This is that's the actual entryway. This could be the theater here, retail space along the way, and another retail space on the end. So needs more rockets. Yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of cool. Space race age. Interesting stuff. So I think let me stop right there for a moment. This kind of wraps it all up here for the day. I mean, it's just an interesting format, and this is one of several portfolios in this process that we're working with here. And from time to time, I'll go back to this. We've got a meeting, I think, November 2nd with these guys again to kind of go through some detailed work and add to it. And if that comes about, and I'm given the permission to kind of put the pieces on the Twitch program or my stream for Dr. Contrast, I'll keep you posted and we'll keep you up to speed on that. And just neat stuff to work with, so really neat stuff. Dan, thanks very much, Chip. It was really very, very cool to have you spend the time today. It's great to hear you're on board again. Missed you an awful lot. I know you're very busy, but I just really appreciate you taking the time to be part of the process. And let me wrap up this, Chip. I think I really would appreciate it. Take a moment to look at last Wednesday stream on Formula One slot car systems. You'll see some really cool stuff there in terms of a lot of development time. We've actually got the model ready to go. We've got the packaging ready to go. We sent the prototype to an individual in Australia, not the actual prototype, but the actual newsletter piece about this new thing coming. And we sent him some information on this new PC program, this slot car system we're dealing with. And he sent a note back to Doug, the guy I'm working through in the Carolinas. He said, this is absolutely epic. It's probably the most significant breakthrough in slot car design in 50 years. I mean, the chassis system is unique unto itself. Maybe I'll share, if I've got a moment, maybe sometime next week, if you tune back in, I'll share what the chassis looks like. It's all ball bearing related. It has active suspension, active aeroflow. I mean, it's just a really cool setup. So we're excited about it. That was the first car. We're going to do a family of Formula One stuff. Then we'll move into a lot of LMP stuff. So we're going to open up the whole thing for the slot car thing and just revolutionize the industry. So once again, so much appreciate the time, Chip. I hope all of you enjoyed this. If you want, some of you watch it later. And also, I've got my Dr. Contrast website active again, not website, pardon me, my email address. The website's still working. We're almost 99% home. We're going to change the entire, so it's much more interactive, much more what I do. The other one was fine, but it's a bit too antiseptic. And then, Chip, we get that thing up and running. I think you'd be surprised. A lot of active video work, a lot of shorts in this thing, much more apparel, product work and the like. So it's a much, much better site all the way around. So thanks for your patience. But if you have any commentary, Chip, about what you let them work on or help you work, or if you have friends, pass on the word. I'm on live on Wednesday. And please drop me a note, Chip, at jim@drcontrast.com. Love to hear from you. And again, thank you so much for taking the time, Chip. It's always great to have you on board. Miss you, and you know full well that I respect what you do. And thank you for taking the time. All that to say, gang, never forget to remember to dare to be great. Have a great day, gang. All the very best, and take care. Thank you.